All right, here we are with Max Luck, Head of Growth at Flare Network. Max, it's so great to have you here at the Defiant.
It's lovely to be here. I've been following you guys for many years since I first kind of came into the space and started my blockchain adventures and education. So it's great to actually be behind the camera rather than behind the computer watching some amazing guests. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And yeah, really great to have a chance to chat and learn more about Flare Network. So let's start from the very basics, what you guys do and how you're built.
Of course. So, wow, starting right at the very beginning, Flare is a layer 1 EVM blockchain network. There were a number of design decisions made at the time when Flare was initially being architected. And being an EVM compatible chain just made a lot of sense. It was kind of with regards to the builders that could potentially come build on the network, the opportunity for the majority of the kind of the blockchain developer community at that time. We really focused on bringing that community to build on a new blockchain. We wanted to be a standalone layer 1 EVM chain. With the main reasoning because we wanted to be able to offer really high integrity data. We wanted to be able to offer price and state data to builders. And we were aware that if we were able to offer that network and have enshrined oracles, then the potential applications that could be built on top of the network in terms of bridging, interoperability, general connectivity, while still maintaining that decentralization, those were all the kind of factors that were taken into account. And so that's why Flare stands today as an EVM network.
Got it. Can you, you mentioned all the things that, make Flare different, but I'd love for you to expand on these because there are so many competing layer 1s and even competing EVM chains. Mm-hmm. So it's important to differentiate in this ecosystem. So mm-hmm. you mentioned enshrined oracles, for example. If we can start with that and what exactly that means.
What does it mean? Okay, so it seems to be something that's still absolutely unique in the space. I haven't really come across any other networks where the validator set is also providing an attestation and data provider role. The idea is that the roles are combined. Data providers on the network provide prices at every block as part of a fast updates, which is 1.8 seconds, which is the finality of the Flare chain. But also at the same time, there's an anchor price, which is at the moment, I believe, every 90 seconds. So you can have a sort of a configured oracle setup for various different perpetuals and lending protocols. So for liquidations, for instance, they can use the anchor price. But for the opening of the trades, they can use the fast updates price, which is in line with a lot of the kind of derivatives platforms that exist in the space. The way that it works with enshrining is that, as I mentioned, the validator set also provides these data provider roles. So I think there's about 80 or so validators for the chain today. And what they're doing is basically also providing data in terms of price feeds, as well as attestations to the state of external systems. Those are both other blockchains, predominantly the non-smart contract chain token chains, and also open APIs. So Web 2 data, internet data.
So that's a really interesting point on how these enshrined oracles actually get off-chain data, because I think that's been the biggest challenge for blockchains to know about things that are happening in the outside world. So how are these oracles connecting to these outside data sources and then connecting that to the network? Because things you mentioned like price, liquidity data, lending data. All of that needs to come from a centralized source. So how does that connect?
The way it works is that every single data provider on the network effectively reads different data sources. They perform their own data science using algorithms that they have to maintain and build themselves. to supply data to a smart contract on Flare, that is the Flare time series oracle. That's the price feed data, where it's a time series oracle data feed. And it can support pretty much anything that's a price pair, anything that's probabilistic data that varies over time. And ultimately, that comes down to supporting all sorts of different types of price feeds for the network. And it's very much reliant upon those individual data providers performing their own data science, supplying that to the smart contract that will then weight towards the actual stake, the delegated stake to each of those data providers on the network, that then performs a calculation. It's an average weighted median, and that kind of then becomes the price for different price feeds on the network.
So how do you ensure that that these prices or whatever data is being gathered is good quality data, that the sources are sound, that they're not being manipulated, that they are a great kind of diversity of sources, because like these are all really difficult problems that are being solved by dedicated Oracle companies. So like how do you solve for that?
So basically, the data providers will go to a number of different open APIs where they can pull price feeds. It could be a number of different exchanges within the space. So there's a number of centralized exchanges that also make prices available. And I believe that there's other sources. But by having the sort of decentralized set of validators pulling that data individually, and there's over 80 of them that are all independent and competing, having that set, plus also the diversity of range from where they can pull those data sources today, that kind of makes for quite a reliable or high integrity, robust price. Rather than just all pulling from one same exchange pricing portal, they're able to pull from a number of different sources.
Right.
And that means that they can then hone the algorithm so that they can fall within a certain reward band to earn rewards on the network.
Interesting. Okay. What use cases or dApps does this model unlock that's different from maybe how other blockchains work?
In terms of the price feeds?
In terms of having these enshrined oracles.
Wow. I mean, so I just covered the time series oracle. I didn't cover the state oracle.
Okay.
The state oracle basically works by having the validator set that are also providing an attestation provider role. Their job is to go and query certain states of external chains. So as a smart contract, as part of a decentralized application, it can query, let's say as part of a bridging app, you may want to kind of prove that a certain amount of Bitcoin has moved from one address to another address at a certain time, potentially with something in the, I think it's called the cool data or some, it's to do with like the memo field, basically. Okay. Some external data that also is compacted into the transaction. That basically can then be proved by that set of Oracle providers, attestation providers, coming to consensus on that external state. And then once a certain threshold has been met, that data can then be proved to the network.
Okay.
So it relies upon a broad set of the validator nodes reaching consensus on the state of external data to then prove that to the chain. And as I say, I think it's above 60% or so have to reach consensus on that state being the same.
Got it. Okay, so how do these time series data and state data, how do these features help Flare stand out in terms of the use cases and applications that can be built on top of it?
So what it means is that you can, as an application developer, you can challenge all sorts of different data from states of external sources, whether it's Web 2 data, like open API data from different internet sources. For instance, the result of a sporting outcome, like a game of tennis or a football result. You can set up prediction markets for that, where the data that's pulled to the chain is decentralized. It's quite useful for prediction markets. But it's also very useful for bridging, proving that there's a trust minimized bridge available on Flare on the Canary network at the moment on Songbird, where it's effectively an over-collateralized system where the agents hold the underlying collateral, whether it's like Bitcoin, XRP, Dogecoin, on those underlying chains. And the oracles are used to prove that those agents are holding those underlying tokens as part of the system that enables the bridging to Flare for those assets to be used in things like lending protocols and.
Nice. Okay, so it can enable more kind of decentralized bridging?
Yes. The idea behind it is that it's built to offer a more robust set of bridges or other interoperability protocols based upon what's happening on the external chains.
Makes sense. Is interoperability your main focus then as a chain?
I think our main focus is actually more to be a DeFi hub for smart contract chain tokens. And so with that comes obviously the requirement for high integrity data to be available on the network. And offering that kind of decentralized infrastructure that supports that is really important as part of delivering upon that promise. I think one of the things that we struggle with in the space is maintaining those decentralized systems whilst offering various different interoperability protocols.
Why the focus on non-smart contract chain tokens?
So Flare was initially created to provide that for Ripple. We've been working quite closely with Ripple over the years to deliver that solution so that XRP holders have the opportunity to use their Ripple on a smart contract chain in DeFi. We initially had investment from the Ripple Xspring entity and then started building. And that kind of then opened up another set of opportunities for other investment. And it was an important first step in Flare's kind of definition of what it was able to provide for the ecosystem. As it turned out, the bridging system really required the opportunity to have our own data. And what I mean by that is we needed to make sure that we could achieve price and state data proofs on the network without relying on third-party providers.
Makes sense. Okay, so because your architecture is well suited for bridging, then that really enables you to become a good hub for these tokens that because they are not, they're not smart contract native, then users will require to use them on smart contract chains where they can put them to work. So it's kind of this native kind of decentralized bridging ability that makes you well suited for these non-smart contract tokens.
Exactly. It's like you need to have a number of different protocols available to support bridging. And the way that we kind of positioned it at Flare was to have these native oracles that inherit the economic security of the entire chain. And that's quite an important principle because when you're bridging, there needs to be that kind of ability to rely on the integrity of the data. Once the data is provided by the validator set, and if the validator set cannot earn rewards as validators without being constantly rewarded as both data provider and attestation providers, if you have that kind of interaction of rewarding systems, then it helps to guarantee the integrity of the data.
Got it. Regarding this close relationship with Ripple and seeing that Ripple has been leaning more and more towards programmability, I think they want to launch native smart contracts on the XRP ledger, and they have this XRPL EVM sidechain. How does Flare fit into that?
I think Flare offers a kind of an additional opportunity for XRP holders to come and use a trust minimized bridge that really revolves around an entire network validator set to participate in DeFi on Flare. Flare is also equally connected to a lot of other chains. We had a partnership with Layer 0 last year that opened up a load of bridging opportunities. So once those non-smart contract chain tokens can be bridged to Flare via Flare's trustless bridge that's developed by Flare Labs. Once they're on the chain, they can then be used kind of bridged via OFT standards to other connecting chains in the ecosystem. On top of that, we have an upcoming application that's being built by an external party that's going to be providing liquid restaking for XRP on Flare. And that becomes sort of quite interesting. I'm not sure about whether that's available on Ripple or Ripple's sidechain or if it's in the plans, but that's kind of what we're really kind of working on at the moment in terms of facilitation.
So that's interesting. So in addition to connecting to other smart contract chains, Flare also is becoming a hub for DeFi protocols on the Flare network itself.
So Flare has its own DeFi ecosystem that's been built out. There's obviously the regular Uniswap v2 and v3 forks that are available on the network. There's also perpetuals, lending and borrowing. And then there's other leveraged synths that are available. We've been working, actually, there's a very interesting builder set that have developed something called Cyclo and Raindex, which are two very interesting applications. Cyclo offering, as I say, leveraged synths, where you can have a liquid staking token that you can effectively mint as a leveraged derivative, doesn't have any kind of liquidation issues, and that can be used to then loop effectively in a similar way to a lending protocol, but without, as I say, the risk of liquidation. We're aiming to become the DeFi hub for non-smart contract chain tokens, starting with XRP. So there's obviously all of those protocols that are available today. The idea is that you'll be able to bridge your XRP to Flare, either put it into the liquid restaking protocol to then get out another token and use that within the DeFi ecosystem Legos that all kind of fit together quite nicely. But you can also use it beyond on other chains as well.
Interesting. Right now, can you give a sense of how big or how liquid the DeFi ecosystem is?
At the moment, I think we managed to reach very recently $80 million TVL. It's been quite a gradual process. We started incentives back in July of last year. The community voted in a proposal that brought, I believe it was 510 million FLR, available over 12 months. There's a vesting period of 12 months for each monthly distribution of FLR tokens, and the FLR themselves, the portions are gradually expanding to be able to accommodate for new protocols joining the chain. And what we've seen most recently is there's been just very steady bridging that's come onto the network, deploying capital into both the DEXs as well as the lending protocols. And we've seen some very good traction on the Songbird Canary network, F-Assets, trust minimized bridge for non-smart contract chain tokens. There's been a very high number of mint and redemptions, especially in Doge. XRP has also experienced some very large minting on the network. So we're reaching kind of quite a nice level of TVL on the chain, despite quite challenging market conditions at the moment. And the anticipation is that once these protocols go live, with a whole new set of incentives, we're anticipating that there's going to be some quite interesting activity taking place on the network.
Interesting. So what's the kind of, what are the next steps or the roadmap for these incentives? Like you mentioned that there's increasing amount of tokens that are being unlocked every month. Are there any additional rewards campaigns or anything else, or it's it's just like this more like constant onboarding of applications this way?
I mean, every new application that launches has its own set of tokens that it can potentially launch. I think that those are going to come to light on the network. There's a recent partnership with a major token launchpad that's coming to the network as part of an integration with an existing DEX. And having the opportunity to use those tokens as part of the incentive plans for users that are deploying assets onto those different protocols helps to compound the rewards that are available. In addition, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a monthly flare drop on the network that's available. And That's for all users that are wrapping and delegating their tokens to the time series oracle, to the FTSO, and also for staking to the validator set. And so as a sort of collecting all of those yields together really starts to make for quite a compelling APY available on the network.
Interesting. Can you provide more details on when you expect these dApps to go live?
I mean, they're going live every few months or so. We're anticipating that the liquid restaking protocol will be launching later this year. There's also going to be a modification to the F assets bridge to make it more scalable, more capital efficient. So we're anticipating there will be a lot more liquidity available on the network when it goes live on Flare. And we'll be having a number of different partnerships announced over the coming months as well. My intention is to really build out our DeFi ecosystem for these non-smart contract chain tokens, and really make sure that there's a plethora of different opportunities for the community to make use of. Really welcome the XRP community onto Flare, the mainnet.
Super interesting. Of course, interoperability is a problem for all chains. Even within the Ethereum ecosystem, between the L1 and the L2s, and also across all different chains. I think it's one of the main pain points of crypto, how hard it is to interact across all these different chains. Do you think there's an opportunity for Flare there to become a sort of bridge between, even if your focus is non-smart contract tokens, maybe even for smart contracts chains to be kind of this hub to easily interact between chains?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're working on is making the Oracle data available to external chains. Really, the Flare data connector, which is the state data Oracle for Flare, being able to provide that data to external chains, I think would be very useful in terms of interoperability, because suddenly you would be able to prove the state of the XRP ledger on chains like Polygon or on Berachain. We have the ability to relay that data. I really see Flare as partly as a utility layer for the industry. And I believe that by offering this DeFi hub and also offering the Oracle data to external networks, that will help to position Flare as that utility layer and real hub between all the different chains.
Also, a big issue with bridging has been security, because bridging often relies on really kind of centralized custody of tokens and assets. So some of the biggest hacks have been on bridges. So how does Flare help solve that problem?
So for the F assets design, it uses an over-collateralized, trust minimized bridging architecture. As mentioned, when we were kind of architecting the network, it was very important to have decentralized native enshrined oracles for price and state. That would then facilitate the building of the bridging application to enable a peer-to-peer model. So the idea is that individual agents that provide collateral on Flare that's locked can facilitate bridging of the non-smart contract chain tokens from Bitcoin or XRP or Doge to Flare. The idea being that they put up the collateral at a 1.5 times value on Flare, and it's assigned or allocated to the users that are bridging their tokens, and the agents are compelled to hold the underlying. If the Oracle, the Flare data connector, proves that one of the agents is no longer holding the underlying, there's an opportunity that the funds held on the chain in terms of stablecoins in the agent's vault can be released and passed to the user to compensate them for their loss of the underlying. So that's how the trust minimized bridging actually functions. That's been sort of the main area that we've been really grappling with. The next phase is making it more collateral efficient. Obviously, it's hard to scale when you're having to put up 1.5 times in the stablecoins to back the underlying position. we're working on the next phase of that, which still gets around the kind of centralization issues that we've witnessed on other protocols, still maintains that level of decentralization while also facilitating scalability.
Super interesting. So, okay, so this is one major area that you're focusing on, having these DeFi protocols come live. What are other kind of major milestones should we look forward to on Flare?
So just tomorrow, we're going to be leaving actually for California. Next week, on the 7th of March, we'll be starting a hackathon in partnership with Google Cloud. That's delving into the opportunities to create agentic AI within the confidential space TE infrastructure that Google Cloud offer. So Flare has kind of, whilst also delivering all of this kind of interoperability and this kind of DeFi hub for Ripple, for Bitcoin and Dogecoin, we're also working within the AI space with a focus on trusted execution environments to facilitate verifiable off-chain compute.
Interesting. Okay, so you're doing a hackathon together with Google to incentivize people to build AI agents on Flare?
Yes. So it's a Flare AI kit.
Okay.
It uses the secure enclaves that Google Cloud, because Google are actually a validator and data provider for Flare, and they began, I believe it was last February in 2024. And basically, we're looking to now get to the point where we can start to extend the computation opportunities available for the Flare network. One of the issues I think that all blockchains sort of struggle with is to really enable consumer-grade dApps that can run within, computation environments like you would have on a phone. I think the trusted execution environments enable an extension of blockchain networks. And with Flare, we're working on establishing that initially with AI and LLMs running within TEs, later on with kind of broader use cases.
Wow, so interesting. So, for example, like what will AI enable on Flare? Like just different sorts of applications, or like how will the end user benefit from all this?
In terms of AI on Flare, I think it offers the ability for users to start to deploy agents that can act on their behalf. I think what we're aiming to get to is a situation where you'll have the ability for users to have their own AI agents that can operate within Flare's DeFi ecosystem, generate yield, act on behalf of the user according to a set of parameters that are defined by smart contracts on the network.
Super interesting. Awesome. And then to wrap up, I always like to kind of understand the long-term vision and how you think Flare fits into just the broader blockchain ecosystem. Like, where do you see this industry going and Flare's role in it?
Wow, the industry. I think I need some water. Can I just grab some water?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead. I know it's a big question, but I think it's always good to just end with like the big picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Where do I think the industry is going? I think that over the coming months, over the coming years, we are going to start to see a lot more regulation for the space. I think a lot of people have been waiting for some proper guidelines in which they can operate. I think once those come into play, I think there's going to be an opportunity for more companies to launch on natively digital rails. I think there's going to also be the opportunity for a lot of the decentralized financial applications to actually onboard institutional capital. I think there's going to be probably a lot more KYC, AML, KYT supported environments on blockchains. Privacy will become more widespread. You'll see more of the bridging of capital into the space in a more meaningful way. And I think there will be the opportunity to have, these kind of trusted counterparty liquidity environments operating within the industry. And you'll start to be able to see the proliferation of digital assets as a meaningful asset class that can be relied upon. I think there's also one of the things that, my background is in TradFi, back when I was much younger, and the transparency and the ability to actually have provenance of funds is quite important, especially within kind of the era that we live in. It was definitely something that caused quite a large issue back in 2008. And I think that's, that when the Bitcoin paper was released, that really kind of opened the doors to how the future could look. I think over the coming years, once we have that regulation in place, there'll be an opportunity to fulfill that. I think that there's very much an opportunity for decentralized finance to flourish, but I think that it will be kind of something in between. There will be kind of more protective environments for consumers. Ultimately, the consumers really do need to be protected. And as you witness every day, there's quite a lot of issues that still remain in the space. But I think that those structures will be put together to provide that. And hopefully no one will even know that they're using blockchain.
Absolutely. Awesome, Max. So that was great. Really, really well put together, kind of this broad vision of the space. And super exciting to hear about all the plans that Flare has, its current DeFi ecosystem, what you're doing with AI. Super interesting stuff. So thank you so much for sharing with me.
Thanks for having me at Altitude here in Denver 2025. It's been a pleasure,
It's
Camilla.
been great.
Cheers.